Okay, so what we're going to be doing, first of all, good to everybody. We have now a number of classes, maybe a couple, maybe several. We'll see what happens. We're going to focus on the Pesach laws. The way I want to do this is as follows. We're going to start from the first chapter, Taf Chav Tes 429 in the Shulchan Aruch. So this Sunday class is going to be like the same format in the Shulchan Aruch. We're going to learn it. Whatever we cover this year is covered for our series of all Shulchan Aruch. And next year, wherever we're up to, we'll continue from that now. All other supplementing material we'll do on the Tuesday night class. So then as you see, and I'll take the chance to advertise the book that was not here last year, so this is the first time you can get it. Great book. First time in English you have. It's like Blumenkrantz times 10, just organized. No offense to anybody. Just facts on the table. You have everything here. We're obviously not going to be able to cover everything, so what I want to do on the Tuesday night class is maybe take a few subjects and go through those subjects and everything remaining, that will be covered in the first halacha today. The first halacha today is really going to cover everything we have to learn the whole Pesach. It's one that includes all. Yeah, but it's going to take us years. Okay, we're ready. You can get rid of the internet. I got the file. Okay, so let's begin. We're in chapter 429. If you guys want to open up, you can either by getting a Machaber. We're not in the Alter Rebbe, we're in the Machaber Shulchan Aruch. You can simply open up your phone, your browser, and type in Safaria, and in there they have chapter 429 in English and in Hebrew. Okay, Safaria is a great website. They have tons of material there. They do great work, and you can get access to their chapter over there. Again, we're in 429. Hilchos Pesach.
Sefaria or Safari? How do you spell Safari?
That was not a coincidence. You came just on time.
I heard you be talking about me.
You haven't been here in a while, so I guess you didn't want to pass over. That would be too much in tune with your name.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Again, Taf Chav Tes is our first siman. Hilchos Pesach continues from 429 until 492. So the good news is it's not as long as Shabbos, which is approximately 100 chapters longer, but it's still long. It's the longest of all the holidays. And let's not forget, this doesn't include Yom Tov laws applicable to Yom Tovim, which is its own section, which we're not doing right now. We'll have to do that another time. Okay, so Hilchos Pesach is split up to a number of subcategories. We have a lot of mitzvahs going on in Pesach. If you include, and this by the way does not include the Korban Pesach. If you include the Korban Pesach, we have over 20 mitzvahs involved. And when Mashiach comes, we're going to have to start learning the Korban Pesach. We're going to probably put all this away and start learning just those halachas, because those are so many details involved in that. We'll touch upon that very soon in the first sif when we begin it. Okay, so we have a number of halachas of discussions, beginning with the first chapter we're going to do today is just discussing the month of Nisan and 30 days prior, what happens. And likewise, right after that, it begins the laws relating to chametz, cleaning for chametz, v'dikas chametz. So that's a huge section, on about 10/15 chapters in the Shulchan Aruch, dealing with bedikas chametz, cleaning for chametz. Where do you have to clean? We then have a number of chapters dealing with what is chametz. When do I define a mixture as chametz? What if it's an inedible mixture that contains flour? What if flour fell into my food? There's a whole bunch of different details of what is defined as chametz in terms of the eating prohibition and or the owning prohibition, right? That's why we do bedikas chametz, because of the owning prohibition. We then have a whole discussion regarding kashering your kelim, kashering your vessels. We have a whole discussion regarding selling your chametz. We have a whole discussion regarding baking matzahs. That's about 15 to 20, 15 simanim, baking matzahs, which pretty much we get to ignore because we're not actually baking the matzahs. We're buying them from a bakery. Even if we're involved with chabura, it's taken care of by the bakery. Chabura is just there to assist. in most cases. And then we have a whole set of halachas dealing with Erev Pesach, and of course the night of the Seder, which is about another 15 to 20 simanim. And then we have the holiday prayer laws, and that's it. That's over. That's everything.
Which chapter?
The first, 429. Yeah. Okay, so let's begin. We do not fall on our faces the entire Nisan. Now, it doesn't mean what it actually sounds like, but for anyone who just came off Purim, this means we don't get drunk during Nisan, we don't drink, we don't fall. That was a joke. Is talking about Tachum. We're going to get to that soon. Let's begin the first seif. That's just that's the category, that's the topic name that the Mechaber gave to this chapter. Shoylin behilchas Pesach chen Pesach shloishim yom. Says the Mechaber, based on the Gemara in Pesachim, that we begin asking about the laws of Pesach 30 days before. So that is exactly why we are starting the learning. This is what I said. The first halacha covers everything. The halacha is you got to learn the laws of Pesach 30 days before, starting 30 days beforehand. Now this is an interesting halacha because we usually don't have a halacha telling you got to learn the halachas. It's rare. I mean, we haven't seen it. It's something very strange that it would have to make note of that. I mean, isn't it obvious that in order to know the laws, you got to learn them? Before Purim, it doesn't say the first halacha, learn the laws of Purim, right? Before Shabbos, it doesn't say learn the laws of Shabbos. It's an obvious necessity in order to know what's going on. So the reason behind this chiddush, the Rabbi gives in the first three seifim in his Tav Chav Tes, a lot of background to this, and I'm going to say it outside what he explains. Back in the day, when we had the temple, we of course had the obligation of bringing various sacrifices on each holiday. And that the Shalosh Regalim, it was Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, we had to bring 3 sacrifices. One was the Karban Re'iyah, which is every single Jew had an obligation to do a pilgrimage to Jerusalem, to the temple, and bring a karban. We had to bring the karban simcha, which is just like we have the mitzvah of simcha on a holiday that we drink wine. Back in the day, that was fulfilled with the shlamim, with the meat of the karban shlamim. So that was a second animal we had to bring. And then we had to bring a karban chagiga. So those were the 3 of every holiday, Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot. So when Mashiach comes, nobody planned to go anywhere else for Pesach or Shavuos or Sukkot. Everyone's staying right here in Jerusalem. We have to make it to Jerusalem, all of us. Okay, so just planning ahead. Some people book their tickets for like 5 years from now, going to be by their relatives. Just have to know. Okay, so now Pesach, of course. What is the Chagiga? The Chagiga was, it's every single holiday we have an obligation of bringing a festival karban. It's different names for different purposes, but basically it's 3 in total, Re'iyah, Simcha, and Chagiga. Now Pesach, we of course have an additional karban called the Karban Pesach. Now, even without that additional karban, the laws of karbanis are very, there's a lot of details involved. First of all the laws of Tumah and Tara are applicable. So we have to learn all the laws of purity and impurity. I mean, right now we don't have knowledge of that, at least not deep knowledge of it, but it's a whole new Judaism. If we had to literally practice the laws of Tumah and Tara, we would just have a whole discussion. Can you put the coffee on the table? Who touched the coffee? Am I allowed to put my hand on the table now? Everything would be about Tumah and how am I going to get pure now with Tumah's mace. It's a totally new Judaism with the laws of Tumah and Tara, with a lot of detailed laws. And that's in addition to laws of the animal and how to bring the karban and laws of the karban Pesach. So because of all these details, the Chachamim established that before every one of the Shalosh Regalim, 30 days before, everyone's got to start learning these halachas to become an expert in these detailed laws. And the Alter Rebbe explains that the original takana was that in the yeshivas and the Batei Medrash, that they would have to pave the way to make this the topic of learning for the next 30 days.
What's the source of the halacha? This halacha?
It's in the Talmud.
Okay.
The Talmud, this was a takana of the sages, at least from Talmudic time, most likely prior, because this was in the first temple, second temple, they were bringing these karbanos, so most likely this is a very, very old institution but it's sourced in the Talmud. And so the Alter Rebbe explains that in the yeshivas that they would change the star and they would take up Maseches Pesachim and start, or Maseches, all the details of Karbanis and start learning it. Then he explained that what would they do with all those who weren't in yeshivas? Those people who weren't affiliated with a Beis Medrash or a learning program. So that's how the custom, says the Alter Rebbe, of the Shabbos Hagadol drashas came about. Why is the concept that before Sukkot you have a drasha, before Yom Kippur really, and before Pesach we have the Shabbos Hagadol drasha? That came about because of this, because they weren't around. So therefore they set a set Shabbos that all the townlets would gather to the main city and hear the chief rabbi speak about the laws of Pesach or the laws of Sukkot, etc., to expound it to them. Alter Rebbe goes ahead and asks the following: now that we no longer have a temple, the reason behind the original and initial institution is no longer applicable, because we don't have to study these halachas anymore, of learning the laws of the sacrifices. So do we still have to do this? In the yeshivas, are they allowed to continue learning whatever Masechta they were learning after Purim, or can they, or do they have to go ahead and start learning Hilchos Pesach? So he says the following: that practically it applies even today, is even though we don't have the sacrificial laws applicable, there's so many details of laws applicable to Pesach and Sukkot, not Shavuos. Shavuos is just eating cheesecake, it's not a big deal. But Pesach and Sukkot is a lot of detailed laws applicable, so therefore that takes the place of the sacrificial discussion. So basically the Alter Rebbe concludes, and as we see here from the Mechaber, the fact that he brings this down, he wasn't bringing this down to tell us history. He wrote this halacha because he also agrees that practically even today this applies. And therefore before Pesach and Sukkot, we have a 30-day gap that we have to start learning those halachas. Another practical application would be if two people ask the Rav a question, one having to do with Pesach, the other having to do with some other topic. He gives precedence to the Pesach asker and he passes over the other asker, even if the other asker asked him first. So that's another advantage of Pesach questions. The Alter Rebbe though concludes, and this is I think the most important part in his simon, that today we see that it's not really so customary in the yeshivas that they close their books and start only learning Pesach after Purim. And the question is, why not? And he explains the reason is as follows. This was only necessary when Judaism, the laws of Judaism and details of Jewish practice were handed over through tradition of mouth to mouth, orally. The teachers would teach orally to the students, and the students would receive orally the information, and then they would give it over again to their students, and that's how the tradition, all the way back to Moses from Sinai, received its authenticity. However, today, since the times of Rabbeinu HaKadosh, that everything is now written down in Sfarim, Alter Rebbe says there's no need for the rabbi to get up and talk. He says everyone has an obligation to open up the Sfarim, to learn from the Sfarim, and to become a baki in the laws through them. So, once again, this is it. This is how you can fulfill your mitzvah. We have copies in the Beis Chabad. I don't know. I think there's copies in the Beis Chabad. They should know the price. It's true. It is true. The main thing is the learning of the material. It doesn't matter how you get the material. The main thing is the learning the material. Okay. With that said, we're going to continue in this halacha. Says the Ramah. There's a whole bunch of little topics here that are nothing to do with each other that are discussed. The first one was what we just said, becoming an expert in the halachas, written in the Shulchan Aruch. And I want to point out one more important point, and that's as follows: that there's a type of misconception that what I read in the book, it's not real. Let's say I'm reading the Shulchan Aruch, so I don't really follow it. It's just historical. Because in order to know what actually to do, you have to actually hear the rabbi tell you. So that from this halacha we see that's incorrect. The Alter Rebbe here ruled, based on previous Poskim, that we don't even need the rabbi anymore because we have the books. He rules the exact opposite. We don't need the rabbi anymore. Now it is possible that there's more information that we haven't seen when you're just learning from the books. As the same way it's possible there's more information the rabbi didn't say when he's giving his speech or when he's answering the question. But the point is that 100% when you read something in a sefer, a sefer of halacha l'maaseh, and it says such and such, you can assume it's correct and do it. You don't have to ask anyone's approbation to it. If you have a question on it, it contradicts something else, okay, mistakes happen. Also with the Rav, if Rav says something's contradicted, you can bring it up. Maybe he misunderstood the question. But the point is that you are allowed to learn from Svarim. And why am I mentioning it? Because there are some I knew one Rav, for example, who, from Amal, he's an elderly Rav, and he, when people would tell him halachas from Shulchan Aruch, he would tell them, oh, you don't understand how to learn the halach in Shulchan Aruch. That was his shita is that yeah, you can't pass from Shulchan Aruch. You have to ask the Rabbi always the questions. But the truth is that it depends. If you're learning from the Chabad Shulchan Aruch, yes, that is not the final ruling necessarily. But if you're learning from a book, such as the Al Tibba Shulchan Aruch, or any book that brings that is how we follow, then absolutely you have the complete right to follow it. And not right, obligation. Okay, so the Marmah continues, in minag likneis chitim l'chak lanim l'tzarech pesach mishadab eri beis chodesh tzarech litin zeh. So the Marmah continues and states, brings down here the minag of ma'is chitin, which is a very old custom of the chitim tax, the wheat tax that would be collected. And just a little bit of background of this is we all are familiar with ma'is chitin, which is usually not just collected for matzahs, but it's collected for all poor people, for all their needs for Pesach. And this is a very old custom. Now, it used to be that this collection fund was an obligation. It was mandatory. It wasn't something that you can decide to give or decide not to give. But rather, every city resident had an obligation to participate in it with how much money, depending on what the Gabo'i Tzedakah, the collectors, evaluated. So someone who they evaluated is worth $100,000, they would ask him, give $1,000 to Ma'is Chitim Fund. If he would say, no, thank you very much, I don't feel like it, they would bring 2 policemen into his house and take the money. It wasn't a choice. We're not asking you, we're telling you, it's a tax. Just like we have to, the IRS tells you, you got to pay this and this and this, right? They say 2 things you can never run away from, death and the IRS, right? So there's no escaping. And this is how it was. Back in the day, there was an actual obligation that was enforced. Today, we don't have the ability to enforce these things. But just to understand that initially this was a mutual responsibility on the community to make sure that the paupers in the city, for the city, you don't have to worry about anyone else's cities, just for, let's say here in Tzfas, that they get their ma'is chitim, and they get their money to provide them for the holiday. We're not going to go into it, but here in the Shulchan Aruch and the Poskim goes into all the different details of, since it's an obligatory tax, who would have to pay for it, and it goes by how long did you live in the city for, if you just came to visit, or if you're here for 30 days, if you're here for 12 months, etc. It wasn't a percentage, it was, they would evaluate, the wealthier would give more. It's very similar to the way many people want to reform the tax system, in which the wealthier you are, the greater of a tax you pay, and you don't get just like a set 40% no matter how much money you're making. So sometimes it could be 80% or 90%, it all depends on how much they would make. But again, this is extinct, this concept is extinct because they don't have power to enforce people anymore. And the Mechaber continues, Ein neifen al pneihem b'chol chedesh Nisan. We do not fall on our faces throughout the entire month of Nisan. This is referring to Tachanun, that is a euphemism for Tachanun. Why? Because back in the day, the way Tachanun was originally said, you would literally fall flat on the ground. We don't do this anymore. We just do the likened, armrest. But nonetheless, that is still considered neifen al pneim to a certain degree. So we don't recite Tachanun throughout Nisan. Al-Tib explains that the reason for this is because the entire day is holiday-like. We have karbanos that were brought throughout the entire first half of the month, pretty much until Yud Gimel, not including Yud Gimel. Then we have Yudalu with all those karbanos. Then we have the 7 days of Pesach. So if majority of the month is a holiday, let's create the entire month as a holiday. That's why we don't say Tachanun. And he continues, we don't say, whenever we don't say Tachanun, we also don't say Tzidkascha on Shabbos by Mincha. We don't give a spadim in the month of Nisan. So it's Chas v'Shalom le'aleinu, Ozav Chaim l'chol chai, an individual passed away in the month of Nisan, even if they are not Lubavitchers, we don't say hespedim, no eulogies by the funeral. It's forbidden to give a eulogy. which means that even if someone says the introduction that many like to do, even though it's forbidden to give a eulogy, I'm going to give a little introduction. And as Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach used to do when he was present, you said, very good, stop right there. Let's continue with Kaddish. He wouldn't let people.
What does that mean, introduction?
Some people that, even in Chabad, that we don't ever give eulogies, so they say, we don't give eulogies, so I'm not going to give a eulogy, and then they go on to give a eulogy. So they basically, now it's also. During the month of Nisan, there's an actual issa to give a eulogy, a hesped, and when it's also to give a hesped, it's not for the benefit of the neshama. So everybody needs to think, who has priority here? Is it for your benefit or the neshama's benefit? The neshama just went through a terrible tragedy, passed away from his guf. I think he receives the upper hand in having the precedence of what's beneficial for him. So bottom line is it's forbidden to give a hesped. We don't fast in the month of Nisan. There's a discussion regarding chasen and kala. So, the only fast, of course, that we do fast is for Bechiris who fast on Erev Pesach. That is the one fast that is a minog that is done in order to atone for the fact that they were switched, as we know, on Yud Dalid, on Tesvav, and all the Bechirim died. That's discussed in greater detail in chapter 470, about 40. Tainas Chalaim you can even do on Shabbos. So certainly in the month of Nisan you can do a Tainas Chalaim, but today we no longer do Tainas Chalaim. Today we ignore our dreams, we don't take them seriously, as taking the dream seriously is what itself can create the different meanings behind the dream. So today we no longer are into the dream business. Back in the day, there were dream rabbis. They were in charge of interpreting dreams. They,
Where did they get information from?
A lot of different sources, mainly the Talmud Maseches Brachos and other sources that discuss dreams. But today, the rabbinical directive is, if someone comes to you with a troubling dream and he wants a tikkun, you tell him the tikkun is, it's a bunch of nonsense, don't pay attention to it. That's the tikkun.
Isn't there a narration of the dream in the Siddur, though?
Yeah, correct. But as I'm saying, correct, but the directive is to tell people not to worry, to ignore, and to think good. Continues the Ramah, Gami Amrim Tziddik Adin B'chol HaChodesh. Tziddik Adin is a prayer that is said, as we know, by burial. We don't say it in the month of Nisan. But Nagu Shem Esana B'tanas Klal Afiliyim Shemeis B'Av V'Imei. Many people used to be accustomed, not many, all Jews used to be accustomed to fast on the day of the yahrzeit of the father or mother. Today it's not customary anymore amongst Chassidim. Most of the world is no longer accustomed to do this. So he says that you're not allowed to fast for a yahrzeit during the month of Nisan, as we don't have any fast. But a fast for the dream, we can fast, we said before. Ramah continues, starting from Erev Pesach, we skip Mizmor L'Sayda. What's the reason why? We skip Mizmor L'Sayda because, anyone know?
Chametz.
What about Chametz?
The Korban Toida was brought with Chametz.
So the Korban Toida was an animal, which is meat, but it came with wine and bread. It was a full meal. And the breads were 4 types. One was a oily, floury mixture. The second was a crackery, anointed with oil mixture. The third one was a deep-fried flour mixture. And the fourth one was chametz. So since the fourth one can't be, if you bring in an Erev Pesach, you're going to be shortening its amount of edibility. So therefore, the Chachamim decreed that we don't bring it. And that's why we don't say Mizmor L'Sayda. Even though one is going to do with the other, when you say Mizmor L'Sayda, it's not really the Todah sacrifice. You're saying thanks to God. It's a Mizmor until. But nonetheless, that is the custom that the Ramah records. We don't say Mizmor L'Sayda throughout the entire Pesach, starting from Erev Pesach. The Ramah also records a Minhag Ashkenaz, and that is that only on Erev Pesach and throughout Pesach do they not say Kel Erech HaPayim, which is normally said before Kriyas HaTorah Mondays and Thursdays, and Lam Natseach. Minhag Ashkenaz is, till this very day, that even on days that Tachan isn't said, they still say Lam Natseach, and they still say Kel Erech HaPayim before Kriyas HaTorah. The minhag of Chabad is not to say it, like Sfardim, that whenever there's a day without Tachan, we also skip a whole bunch of other prayers. That's minhag. So the Ramah here is going, in the Ashkenaz, we said starting from Erev Pesach, these things would be skipped, but according to Sephardim and minhag Chabad, this would be skipped already from the beginning of the month. And here it already jumps to Isru Chag in the end of this halacha that the custom is to add in eating and drinking on Isru Chag. Increase in meals on Isru Chag, that's a mitzvah. On every Isru Chag to have a slightly additional meal. Okay, that's the end of 429. That's it. It's the whole simon, a jumble of many different subjects. There's a whole bunch of halachas relating to 30 days before. I want to save that for Tuesday night. We'll go into those details. I want to try to focus here on the order of the simanim. Okay. Next siman is Taf Lamed 430, and it has one halacha, and this is about Shabbos HaGadol. This is the last one of the easy ones. Right after this one, we start already the laws of Dikas Chametz and all the complex Chametz halachas. Shabbos shelafnei Pesach karin asay Shabbos HaGadol pnei haneis hanasaba. He says the Mechaber that the Shabbos before Pesach is called the Great Shabbos because of the miracle that happened on this day. What's the miracle that happened on this day? So we know that there are various opinions in the Rishonim of what exactly happened. The Alter Rebbe records that the miracle was as follows: that the firstborn, the firstborn Egyptian sons, started a civil war. They came to Klal Yisrael. They saw them preparing their sheep, which was the idol of the Egyptians. They said, "What are you guys doing?" So they said, "Well, we're preparing to sacrifice him in another 4 days." This was on Yud Nisan. And so they went and they said, "What do you mean? How can you sacrifice him in another 4 days? We're going to kill you guys for killing our gods." And no, you don't understand. All the firstborns, which represented like the strength and the army of Mitzrayim, are all going to be killed by God by a plague. Now, this is not fairy tale. They already went through 9 plagues. They knew this was business. So they went to Paro and told Paro, "Listen, you got to let him go. Let him go. It's a done deal. Let him go." And Paro said no. So they started a civil war in Mitzrayim. That's how the Alter Rebbe explains it. Not all the Rishonim explain it this way. Some just explain that they wanted to kill, these Bechiris wanted to kill the Jewish people, and Hashem did a miracle, and they lost all their teeth. All their teeth got knocked out. And other different types of explanations of the sort of the miracle. But the way the Alter Rebbe explained the miracle is that no, they went ahead and actually did a civil war, and many Egyptians were killed in this civil war. As we know that usually in civil wars, more people are killed in civil wars than probably all wars combined of the country versus another country. So we don't have a number of how many Egyptians were killed, but we can imagine if all the Bechiris represented the strength of Egypt, made a war, a battle against Egypt, that a lot of people were deceased due to that. So this is the Neis Hanasaba, so therefore we call it Shabbos HaGadol due to the Neis Gadol, the great miracle. The Rabbi explains something interesting, which is that what is the reason that the Alter Rebbe brings down this reason of his twist of the civil war? What relevance does that have to us? What do I care if Syrians are killing each other? What's that got to do with me? What's it got to do with me that the Egyptians were killing each other? The miracle is they didn't harm the Jewish people. That's what we should celebrate, that the Jewish people weren't harmed. So he explains the reason is as follows. As what was the war over? The war was over whether they should continue enslaving the Jewish people or not. And this was the first time that the Egyptians finally understood, even though it wasn't necessarily the government, but it was at least the people, a great portion of the populace, that you have to let the Jewish people go. And this is called the Chalta de Geula. That when the Goyim begin to understand and proclaim that the Jewish people have to leave the exile, that is already considered like the beginning of the Geula, and that's why it's considered Neis Gadol. The Ramah continues, The custom is that by Mincha of Shabbos HaGadol, this is in 3 weeks from now, because Pesach falls on Shabbos this year, so this is the Shabbos before. And so the minhag is that by Mincha, after Mincha, we begin saying the Haggadah until Chapon V'Neseinu. Once again, this Alter Rebbe says has to do with the fact that since the miracle of Shabbos HaGadol and the emancipation, so to say, declaration began on the Shabbos, so therefore begin saying the Haggadah already then. Okay, that's the end of 429, and 430, and now we're up to 431. until Chapel Kol V'Nesena. It's written in the Siddur. They have the exact portion. But until the words Chapel Kol V'Nesena. It's a large portion. It's most of Magid. Okay, let's give it a little introduction. We're going to now begin Zman, chapter 431, which is going into cleaning for chametz and bedikas chametz. Okay, so these the next section of chapters, which is from 431 until 444, is dealing with a few factors. Bedikas chametz is the general subject, but under that we have the subject of the actual ceremony of bedikas chametz that takes place the night before Pesach, this year on Thursday night. And of course we have the pre-cleansing, which is taking up most of the time. The night before Pesach is just more ceremonial, but all the hard work is beforehand. So what do you have to clean? Where do you have to clean? How do you have to clean? That's also all discussed there. When do you have to clean? What if you're moving, etc. And then we have a discussion of bir chametz. So those are all the subjects that are talked about in these series of chapters. So it's not exactly in order. So I'm going to give an introduction to try to organize things. And then when we see inside, we see 431, for example, talks about the time of bedikas chametz. Then we go into the reasons. Then it's not. It's in a very different order than let's say I wrote in my book or other people would write about. Okay, so let's begin. So bedikas chametz, the mitzvah to clean one's home for chametz, is possibly a biblical requirement or possibly only a rabbinical requirement. It depends. In other words, let's give a little background. We know that there are a number of mitzvahs associated with chametz on Pesach. And let's take a look at reviewing those for a moment. So we have the prohibition against eating chametz. That's its own that's its own prohibition. That's listed as one of the 613, one of the 365 negative commands. We have a second that's also listed, which is not to eat mixtures of chametz. That's another one of it's an additional negative command. And we have a third one, which is not to eat chametz starting from Erev Pesach for midday. So there's a total of 3 negative commands associated with not eating chametz on Pesach. One for the Pesach night and onwards, one for Erev Pesach, one for even mixtures of chametz. We then have another prohibition, which is even against benefiting from chametz. Isser hana. There's very little precedent in the laws of kashrus to go to the extent of even prohibiting benefit from a food. Can anyone think of any other precedent that we have in the laws of kashrus that are non-kosher food? Basar v'chalav. Basar v'chalav, very good. Anything else? Biblical basar v'chalav is forbidden in benefit. So somebody is working in McDonald's and he took a piece of real cheese and he, by mistake, somehow they got a mispackage and this was not horse meat, but it was actual cow meat. And he put this slab of meat onto this slice of cheese and it was all hot. He transgressed biblical basar v'chalav, and now it's asur b'ana. You can't even sell it. It's biblically forbidden to sell. Okay, so that's another case. Anyone else? Any other cases? Kilei hakerem, the vineyard kilayim, the mixtures. If a vineyard got mixed with grains in the seeding, if it's planted within a certain approximation to each other, then you have to actually burn it. You can't benefit from it. But other than this, also arla is another one we can mention. It's forbidden in benefit. All arla fruits, the first 3 years. But that's pretty much it. We have tens more of different kashrus issues, and none of them are prohibited in benefit. It is all permitted to benefit from them. Even pork, you're allowed to benefit from pork. If someone inherited a pig for whatever reason, they're allowed to sell the pig and make money off of it. But if they inherited a Mac burger, they cannot. They have to burn it. Okay.
Maybe a stupid question, do you sell a pig, you can't sell that pig to a Jew?
Sell it to a guy.
Why can't you sell it to a Jew?
Pigs are the second or third most populated animals on earth. Lots of people will buy it. Huh? Why can't you sell it to a Jew? What's a Jew going to do with it? Right. You can't do business. Al-Khatkhil is also to do business with non-kosher foods. That's their abundant anyways. I'm talking about here biblical benefit prohibitions is very limited in the Torah. Okay, so that's another prohibition, another negative command, which is not listed on its own. It's not another one, so it's not like 4 total negative commands, because this is an offshoot of the 3, because the way that the eating prohibition was written in Scripture is in a way that basically hints or includes that not just that you can't physically eat the chametz, but you can't bring it to be eaten, which means benefit, that you sell it, make money, and then you can buy other food, so you can't get benefit from it. Okay, so bottom line, the reason why we're introducing all this is because this extreme and severe prohibition of even benefit is what created, is why the Torah then went ahead, is what the Mefarshim explain, and wrote 2 other commands, one a positive, the second a negative. The positive is destroy your chametz, destroy all chametz from your home. That is a positive command. In fact, that is the only positive command associated with chametz. There's no positive command called thou shalt not eat chametz. That's a negative command. So the only positive command we fulfill with chametz is destroy the chametz. And then we have the negative command of Bari Bali Matzah, which is chametz shall not be found in your home. So the Mefarshim explained that because chametz is so severe, a person you're not even allowed to benefit from, and someone who eats it is chayiv kares, which is another precedent. The punishment, we don't find punishment of kares for a kashrus food, for eating a non-kosher food, with any other food other than chametz and 1 other food. 2 other foods. Anyone want to say? Parshas Tzav, mentioned in Parshas Tzav, last week's parsha.
Some kind of fat,
Oh, chaylev. Certain chaylev is aser min atayra and carries the penalty of kares. Likewise, blood, certain bloods are aser min atayra and carries the penalty of kares. So that's it. It's chametz. No, blood has 4 different distinctions. Kares, biblical but no kares, rabbinical, and permitted. However, and chaylev also has distinctions. You have kares, you have non-kares, you have rabbinical, and you have permitted. We eat fat. A piece of flesh has fat on it, right? It's specific types of fat that are forbidden, known as chaylev, that is handed over in Messiah to the Baitkim, of which fats it's considered chaylev, and you have to remove. Okay, but I'm just saying it's rare of all the kashrus laws that we have, the concept of kares, of excision, the most severe punishments, is not found by a normal non-kosher food. So this is a very, very serious prohibition, and because of this, the Torah went ahead and extended it, that you're now allowed to own any chametz. And it gave a positive command, destroy it, and gave a negative command, shall not be seen and shall not be found. Let's talk about a little bit the spiritual background and reason behind this. And that is because it's explained that chametz, as we know, is something that rises. It's a food that rises, and leavened bread. And rising represents arrogance, which is the person's full of hot air. He gets full of himself. Justifiably or not justifiably, because in essence it's never really justifiable. And Chassidus explains that the difference between a malik and other types of gaiva is that the gaiva of other types is that at least they have what to brag about. Someone who's a billionaire, he can brag that he's a billionaire. Now, should he brag is a different story, but he has bragging rights, we can so to say. We can understand. A malik is that he's not a billionaire and he acts as if he is. He doesn't even have the rights to brag. So, anyways, but in all, the common denominator is all types of klipa, all types of evil arrogance, of negative arrogance, and so this is what's represented in chametz. So the whole idea that we know in Avodas Hashem, our purpose down here in this world, is to nullify our ego and become batal, become subservient and submissive to the Creator. So because of this, Hashem gave us a 7-day annual diet where we abstain from chametz, so that helps then refine our system that we shouldn't have this contamination of ego. Why doesn't Hashem prohibit it the whole year? You don't always have to go on a diet the whole year. You can choose a month, stay away, and you're good. There's different diets, right, they don't have to be a steady diet. It depends on a certain amount of time. So this is the diet that Hashem gave us, the spiritual diet.
It's everything in moderation, so are we going to the extreme?
For 1 week, yeah. For 1 week, we're going to the extreme, yes. And that's why, as we know, there's so many chumras associated with Pesach and with chametz, because it's not that we're just being machmir with chametz. We're being machmir with the refinement of our souls. So for 1 week, we want to refine our souls to the ultimate level, to the highest level possible. We want to be in the best diet of the diets. So that's why there's so many chumras involved that we keep. Okay. So now, this was an introduction to explain the statement I said earlier that cleaning for chametz could be a possible biblical command or possibly a rabbinical command. How is that? So, the Torah's obligation of destroy your chametz, don't have chametz in your home, technically only applies if you own the chametz. The Torah does not have issue, biblically, there's no issue with the physical existence of chametz in someone's house. The issue is that there is a link of ownership between the leavened bread and the Jew. That's what the Torah cared about. There should be no link of ownership. But if there's no link of ownership and you happen to have chametz in your house that's not yours, there's no problem whatsoever. And in fact, a lot of us do this. This is very common practice. We do mechiras chametz. We sell the chametz to the guy, and we leave chametz in our house. How can we do it? The Torah says, destroy the chametz from your home. Don't see the chametz in your home. How can we go ahead and sell chametz and leave it in our home? The answer is because the isser is only when it belongs to you, the link of ownership. Once that has been removed, there's no problem. So now you can ask, wow, that's great. We just took care of all the laws of cleaning for chametz. All I'll do is I'll sell my chametz to the guy, or I'll give up ownership of it before Pesach, and I can leave the house the way it is. I don't have to do anything. So this is where the Chachamim came in. Chachamim came in and said, we know this is a biblical option, a way of circumventing the hard work before Pesach. However, we're going to put a stop to it, an injunction to prohibit following the biblical law. Now, why do the Chachamim do this? That don't have ownership and leave the chametz in your house. Relinquish ownership or sell it and leave the chametz in your house. They said, no, we're not going to allow this to be done. They restricted it. In certain cases, it can be done. We'll review in which cases it can be done. And some of us do follow this for those cases. But in the normal case, it cannot be done. And there are two reasons, according to the Rishonim, of why the sages prohibited this, reliance on the biblical law. Reason number one, is because, what did we say before? The whole reason why the Torah commanded us such a strict law against even owning chametz is because we have such a severe law regarding eating it. And if you own it, you may come to eat it. Now, even though I understand something you don't own, there's more of a distance of an ability you'll come to eat, there's more of a chance you'll grab a pack of crackers from your closet than you grab a pack of crackers and start eating it from the grocery store. But nonetheless, since there still is a close possibility, being that it is in your house, therefore the Chachamim said, since you may come to eat it, you're not allowed to rely on this and you have to cleanse your entire home from chametz. This became known as the mitzvah b'dikas chametz. Now, in this situation where you do relinquish ownership, or you plan to do so, cleaning your home for chametz is only rabbinical. But if you don't plan to relinquish ownership or sell it to a Gentile, then it would be biblical, then it's literal. That's what I said before. It depends on the case. So in a situation where, and this has happened, where this happens, every year this happens to people. Someone forgot to do bittul. He did his bedika, he was so careful, he was up until 3 o'clock in the morning doing bedikas chametz Thursday night, and he forgot to read kol chamira v'chamia. Didn't read it. He didn't nullify his chametz, so he never relinquished ownership. Now, comes along the next morning, he's burning his chametz, and he's very machmir to wait until all of his spaghetti is burnt. By the time the spaghetti is burnt, it's past the time of seifas chametz. He says, kol chamir, he's not worthless. He can't anymore relinquish ownership from your chametz. So he never nullified his chametz. He then remembers, oh my gosh, I forgot to do the mechiras chametz, so he never sold his chametz to the guy. So he did nothing to relinquish ownership from his chametz. Being that that's the case, he had, when he did his bedikas chametz, he did a biblical obligation. That was a biblical obligation for him to get rid of chametz that he owns from his house. Now the Alter Rebbe novelizes that such a person if in the end of the day he happens to find chametz in his home, he doesn't transgress anything. Why? Because he did his part. He did what he was able to. He checked. He did the best that he could to check. He didn't find it. Now, if he now delays on Pesach from destroying the chametz, that's a problem. But if he doesn't do any delay and he right away burns it, he doesn't transgress anything. Okay, so that's a background of understanding of the mitzvah of bedikas chametz. And that today, practically, since we all plan on doing the bittul, kol chamira, and we all plan on selling the chametz to a guy, which, by the way, incorporates all chametz in the home. All chametz in the home is included in the mechiras chametz, whether we like it or not. That's the shtar that we're signing on. That's the power of attorney that we're signing on.
Don't you usually say where?
That's correct. We do tend to write areas, but it makes no difference. That power of attorney document and the consequential document that is signed by the Gentile includes all chametz that you have ownership of. So whether you like it or don't like it, you signed on it. So if you want to sign on a new power of attorney that states different facts, that's fine. But so long as you're signing on the general typhus, the general nusach, then that's what it states. So technically, even if you forgot to do kol chamira, you didn't do the bittul, but you sold your chametz to the guy, none of the chametz is yours. It's all been relinquished.
So if you find it on Pesach, why do you have to?
Correct. So you don't burn it. Correct. Very good. So therefore, if you find chametz on Pesach, since it was sold to the guy, based on the nusach of the contracts of today, you do not burn it. You have to use a stick, if it's not Yantif or Shabbos, and move it to the closet. That's the guy's section. But to burn it is to burn someone else's chametz. Where do we find a mitzvah to burn someone else's chametz? Can I walk into Publix and burn all the Cheerios there in the middle of Pesach? I would get arrested, and I did no mitzvah. What mitzvah did I do by stealing someone's chametz? By burning someone's chametz?
How did you say a moment ago that the ownership was not something that we do? It's not something, the relinquishing of ownership is not something we do?
We do it 100%. Today, we're machmer, we're not makel. We become more stringent. We add guard railings. We don't decrease. So in addition to relinquish ownership, either through the nullifying of the chametz, which is a rabbinical institution, or through the selling of the chametz, which is a minhag of the past 200 years, so on and so forth, we get rid of the chametz from our ownership. So we have so many avenues out of the biblical prohibition. Either we nullified it or we sold it, right? We have a whole bunch of ways out. In addition to that, we have to fulfill the rabbinical obligation of cleaning the home from chametz, or let's say taking the guy's chametz and putting it in specific areas, because we can sell our chametz to the guy, we still can't leave it all over the house, because you may come to eat it. You may find, a bag of crackers and start eating it. So you have to designate an area for the guy's chametz, close it up. It's supposed to be a mechitza of 10 fachamai. There's laws involved in this. Oh, okay, so I want to touch upon that case. That would be one case in which the Chachamim actually did not apply their decree. Let's get to that in a second. I just want to introduce the second reason. If I mentioned one reason why the sages said you can't rely on the relinquishing of ownership or sale, and you have to get rid of the chametz because you may come to eat it. The second reason that's brought down in Rishonim, that reason is the main reason, the reason I mentioned. And it's important to keep in mind these reasons because they're going to help us navigate many of the practical laws of, do I have to clean this area, do I not have to clean this area? We're going to see how this plays a role in the decision-making of that. If you own the chametz, you have to get rid of it. But if you don't own it, you don't have to get rid of it. Okay. So the second reason why is because this is already more of a, you can view as a more serious reason, because it actually can imperil the biblical relinquishing of ownership, and that is the following. He said that, I understand somebody is going to relinquish ownership, say kol chamira to his crumbs, his pretzels that are under his couch. Right? We all agree we don't care about that. But, if you have a bottle of whiskey that's worth, 1,000 shekel, it's worth $250, you really relinquishing ownership of it? So you mean if after you say Kol Chamir, I walk into your house and take the bottle, you're not going to say one word? Nothing? And let's say it's not just the bottle. Let's say it's all your chametz. If I come and take all the chametz from your house. So if you would start protesting, then it's a sign that what you said was it was just, meklapi chutz. It was from the lip. It was lip service. It wasn't, you didn't mean it. And in order for the bittul to work, it has to be, no, you actually view this as dust. If somebody went into your house and cleaned all the dust from your home, you would pay him for helping you clean, for them helping you clean your home. So why are you screaming at the guy that he's taking your $1,000 bottles of whiskey when he's cleaning the dust from your home? You just said it. It's dust. Elamai, it wasn't real. So that's what Tosfos says. We suspect that the bittul, that the nullification, the relinquishing of ownership is not going to be true and sincere by expensive chametz. And if so, you didn't do anything. You have a biblical obligation to get rid of it. So that is the second reason why the sages enacted, in all cases, the mitzvah b'dikas chametz, in addition to the relinquishing of ownership. Now, there are certain cases in which the sages said, we're not going to get involved, you can rely on the biblical law. And that's really what we're going to go through throughout these chapters from 431 and onwards, outside of the detailed ceremonial laws to the night of the b'dikas chametz, when it discusses the laws of what do you actually have to clean for chametz, where do you have to clean. This introduction is very important because we will see that in certain cases the halacha will say you can fall back on the original law, the original biblical law, to just rely on the relinquishing of ownership, and you don't have to get rid of the chametz. If it's a case where we don't suspect for you coming to eat it or something of the like, that's when we will see that the sages backed down and didn't put the restriction. In a case where you're traveling, so this is very common when someone's traveling. In a case where somebody's traveling, away from home, so the custom is, and this is allowed to be done, is you can sell the home, so to say, and all of its chametz content to the guy. The home itself is one huge mechitza around the chametz of the guy, and I won't enter into the home on Pesach. I'm not going to be living in the home on Pesach. So in this situation where it belongs to the guy and it's segregated from you, I'm not near the chametz, so they didn't enact the decree, and you are allowed to go ahead and do so. Many people do this. So some people who own many homes, they don't have to travel to every home before Pesach and clean them. All they have to do is include in the mechiras chametz of that country, because of the time zone issue, and that's it. It's sold to the guy.
Has to be done by a certain time.
Yeah, every country to their time zone. I mean, if you're in an earlier time zone, then you always sell by the earlier time zone, whichever country is putting in Pesach first. So if I have a home in the U.S., I will just include it in my mechiras chametz here, because we take in Pesach first. But if I have a home in Shanghai, then I would have to do it over there first, because they take in Pesach first. It's a shame we should all have these problems of all of our many homes in all the different continents of the world. Okay, so we're going to begin reading inside from Sif Aleph. So Taf Laman Aleph 431 is a short siman and discusses the time of B'dikas Chametz. Mitchilas Lil Yudala B'Nisan B'Itkins Chametz L'Araner B'Churun B'Stakim Chol Makom Shederech L'Achnis Shom Chametz. In the beginning of the night of the 14th of Nisan, we have an obligation to check for Chametz with a candle, all the holes and cracks in all the areas that it is common to enter chametz into. Okay, so this halacha is in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch is expanded to many seifim, because there's so many details mentioned here, and we're going to try to break them down. Point number one: the takana is that you have to check your home from chametz. Okay, cleaning your home from chametz and checking your home from chametz is synonymous. It's one and the same mitzvah. It's not two different mitzvahs. Clean your home and then check it the night of the 14th. It is exactly the same mitzvah. One is part of the other. In order so when we come to check on the night of the 14th, we don't have to do our whole house, which would be impossible. We therefore pre-clean, etc., and then come to do the Yudala check. So in essence, this takana is that not that on the night of the 14th check your home, but clean and check your home by the night of the 14th. And therefore, it is permitted to begin B'dikas Chametz any night you want. You can even start tonight if you want. can start doing b'dikas chametz tonight, and you're good to go. However, a bracha we can only say in the night of the 14th, because that's the night that all Klal Yisrael is doing it. So therefore, what's written is as follows, and this is practically what's suggested to be done. In order, being that to check the entire home for chametz on the night of the 14th is a very grave task, it's a very big task, especially if you have to take apart things from a closet and take things out and all that. It's a lot of work. Many people have already lined many of their things before the night of the 14th. So what are you going to unline and then reline it? So therefore, the best thing is to do like this. And this follows what is explained in the Shulchan Aruch, based on the halacha. No, I'm saying people cover it with tin foil and different, materials. You clean an item, starting from the Pesach cleaning, whenever you start your Pesach cleaning, as soon as you clean an item, you wait till it's nighttime, because that's the next part we're going to emphasize, that it has to be done to the night, to light of the nighttime, not to daylight. So you have to wait till nighttime. You do your inspection, look at it, and you just did b'dikas chametz, totally mahadran b'dikas chametz, to this area, to this item, and you don't have to recheck it unless you, of course, entered chametz in there again. But assuming you kept it clean from chametz, from that date onwards, comes the night of the 14th, that is exempt from checking. And then comes, so if you do this throughout your Pesach cleaning, you leave one area that you didn't check by 4x4 amos. You leave the living room or whatever. You leave one area that you didn't yet check for chametz, and the night of the 14th you say your bracha, and you only have to check over there. You don't have to check anywhere else. So
whenever you do the big cut chametz, you're done with that room.
so long as you're not bringing chametz to there. So in homes that don't have little children, this is something very practical that should be done. In a home with little children,
It's tough.
it's a tough one. It is definitely a tough one. But then at least closets and areas that children aren't getting to, then at least those areas you can already do and do b'dikas chametz towards.
So in a case like that, the 10 pieces of hummus, you don't have to distribute?
You distribute in the room that you're checking. That one designated area that you didn't check, put it over there, yeah.
Everything in one area.
Yeah. Yes.
Gotta quit. If people want 5 minutes.
It's 11:21. What time is it? Oh, wow. We got to do something about the watches. Mine says 11:21. Here's 11:25. Okay. I'm going to switch the time over here. Okay, we'll continue next week.
Tuesday, no?
Yeah, Tuesday we'll continue, but not from the Shulchan Aruch, because we'll do topics, outside topics. People, fridges, counters, they cover with tin foil.
They just clean it.
Yeah, it's a minhag that in addition, because we suspect maybe some chametz was left over that you missed by the cleaning.
So you should touch it, water should fall on or something.
Yeah, some people, that's what a lot of people do. It's a minhag.
That's the idea.
Yaakov, can I ask you a quick question? For Shabbat,
Yeah.
we're not supposed to eat before we go to bed.